And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Welcome. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Friday, March 21st, 2025. And this outlook is for the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. In setting things up, we have just a couple of weak low pressure impulse over the Gulf pulling back to the north and west, and then another weak double barrel low system will do the same kind of thing, pulling back some moisture toward Kodiak Island, the eastern Kenai, while sending another batch of moisture up into the Panhandle over this weekend. So to start here Saturday morning, IFR conditions throughout a good portion of the Panhandle, especially the intercoastal mountains and the inner channels, and then areas of the northern half. We also find a band of IFR conditions running along the northwest coast, especially down here vicinity and east of Kotzebue Sound, eastern Norton Sound into the southwest interior. A band of light to occasionally moderate snow is along a stationary trough front, and that feature is going to persist through the course of the weekend. As for Saturday afternoon, we find IFR conditions, especially in the northern Panhandle, Chilkoot and White, Juneau areas down toward Petersburg, and then also the eastern Kenai IFR, including Seward and Whittier, and then areas along eastern Norton Sound and down into the lower Yukon Basin toward maybe St. Mary's. This area here, just a broad area, MVFR conditions expected along the west coast, the Gulf Coast, areas of the Alaska Range and upper Yukon Valley. For Sunday morning, redevelopment of those lower ceilings, cloud cover with some patchy light to occasionally moderate snow all the way from Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, all the way down through Kotzebue Sound, eastern Seward Peninsula, eastern Norton Sound, and into the Yukon, lower Yukon Valley, and into the Kuskokwim Valley. We also have IFR conditions along the eastward facing slopes here of the lower Alaska Range and along the northern portion of the Panhandle. Also more in the way of widespread IFR conditions there Sunday morning across the Panhandle. Sunday afternoon, we do find MVFR conditions there for the outer channels, or I should say outer coast inner channels, with still some lingering IFR conditions along the intercoastal mountains, British Columbia and northern Panhandle. Still some pockets of IFR conditions there just east of Norton Sound, and then down here through the middle portion of the Kuskokwim Basin, and then around Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait. We expect IFR Sunday afternoon. Past conditions on Saturday, east central Brooks Range, VFR at Anatuvik Pass and Adigan Passes. As we go south and west toward the west arm of the Alaska Range, Lake Clark may start out with IFR conditions on Saturday morning, giving way to MVFR conditions. Generally, MVFR conditions there, Merrill Pass, and rounding up through the central Alaska Range. Rainy Pass will also be MVFR, Windy Pass, MVFR. And as we head east toward Isabel Pass, generally MVFR conditions will prevail on Saturday, as will they at Mentasta Pass. Copper River Basin also widespread MVFR conditions, including Tanita Pass, and then down across Portage Pass, generally MVFR conditions there. The east end, especially toward Prince William Sound, may become IFR in the afternoon. And then in the far northern Panhandle, we do expect IFR conditions at both Chilkoot and White. Freezing levels aloft, we don't find any milder air anywhere around the state of Alaska. We have some freezing levels above 6,000 feet. There's a couple impulses of low pressure coming northeastward, but otherwise pretty cool air mass in place over the mainland and the eastern Bering and the northern Gulf. This is certainly not one of those patterns where we have a strong front with the freezing levels aloft warming ahead of it, or a building ridge of mid and upper level ridge of high pressure that has warmer temperatures aloft. But nevertheless, where there is some precipitation, we have that stalled out trough or weak stationary front here along the west, and within areas of there in the lower Yukon Valley, eastern Norton Sound, there could be some moderate icing above 3,000 or 4,000 feet. We find along the Gulf, including Prince William Sound, areas of Cook Inlet near Kodiak Island and out across the southeast portion of the Panhandle. There could be some pockets of moderate icing above 4,000 feet. And you have to get almost into the North Pacific before you get icing there above 5,000 feet. And looking at the jet stream level, 30,000 feet, there is a jet core with max winds of 125 knots in the North Pacific, southwest of Haida Gwaii and over their British Columbia coast. And then as we look at the mainland, we do have a southerly flow up across the Chukchi Sea coastline of maybe 50, 60 knots. And then back out over the Bering, generally a west-northwest flow, 50 to 60 knots. 9,000 feet, 700 millibars, fairly quiet, relatively light winds over the central eastern areas of the Brooks Range, Alaska Range. We do find some stronger winds of 35 to as high as locally 55 knots in the North Pacific, well off of Haida Gwaii and Vancouver Island. Along the west side of the state, more of a southerly flow at 9,000 feet, and we do have some winds 40, 45 knots there around Shishmaref, above Shishmaref, and there, especially Cape Lisburne and Point Hope. And then at 3,000 feet, we have some wind, but nothing too notable for turbulence. We have some winds that are on the order of 40 to 50 knots just to the south and southeast there of Haida Gwaii, just off the British Columbia coast. We also find some winds of 35 to 40 knots from the lower YK deltas, Nunavik Island to the Pribilovs. And those winds are out of the north-northeast. And then along the Arctic coast, just offshore there of the Beaufort Sea coastline, we find some easterly winds of maybe 35 knots. But the greatest threat of any turbulence for the day, Saturday, will be extending out here along the central eastern Aleutians, and there could be some areas of moderate turbulence on Saturday, surface to 3 or surface to 4,000 feet.